Good morning and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Carrie Ray Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we are here for Free Advice Friday, where we talk about the business of being an author, publishing, writing, pretty much anything on the spectrum. So we're so happy to have you here. You can always join us live by going to newshelves.com/FAF. That will get you registered for the Zoom where you can actually ask your questions live. We also do accept emailed in questions if you can't join us live on Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern. And the email for that is info@newshelves.com. And then all of our replays do go up on YouTube, which is New Shelves Books. So make sure that you go over to YouTube and subscribe there. We're going to jump in for a couple of questions that we got emailed in. Let's go ahead here and start with Victoria's question about audiobooks. So Victoria's question about audiobooks was about bonus materials. If you've got maps, if you've got a workbook, if you have visual assets to your book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, how do you get those assets to the reader and what's allowed and what's not allowed? In the sense of like, how do you upload them? How do we make sure that people have diagrams we reference in a nonfiction book when it's an audio? And there's a couple of ways that people handle this. In some cases, people will remove the need for those visual assets and they just slightly adjust the manuscript of their book for audio. So that's one option. The second option is that when you do upload your audiobook to ACX, Findaway Voices, pretty much anywhere, there is an option to also upload PDF extra materials that will get delivered to the reader when they buy a book. So if you do have diagrams, if you have other things that really need to be in the book, maybe it's a map for a fiction book, you can put the PDF right there when you're setting up the book on Audible or Findaway Voices, whatever it is. And that way it's delivered to the reader. And then there's typically a note in the description that will say, be sure to also download the free PDF that comes with your audiobook for the visuals. Another option, and the one I think Victoria was specifically talking about, was can you send people to your website with bonus materials? So essentially, can you send them to a landing page to get their email and to deliver materials? And absolutely, you can have those kinds of offers. You can do it in the beginning of the book. So you can have a note from the author, or a note from the author that maybe the narrator reads, and that's fine. But it could be a note from the author. There are a number of materials available to you to help you fully enjoy this book, including whatever it may be. To download those, visit newshelves.com/download or whatever it may be. So you can absolutely do that. And you're giving people the information of how they can go find and download those assets. And if you're going to do that, I would recommend that you put it you can't put it in your listing usually. You cannot send them to an external website in your listing. So in your marketing copy, you can't do that. But you can have your narrator or yourself have that note in the beginning of an audiobook as an author's note, and you can also repeat it in the back of the audiobook. Just like we encourage you to have some type of lead magnet in the back of your books, in your print and your ebooks, you can do that with your audiobooks. The key to this, I will say, is making sure that whatever website you're directing people to is very easy to remember and to spell. We do not want to say to download your bonus epilogue, please go to newshelves.com/5WXY2798WYD. Why? Because no one's going to remember that. They will be frustrated and annoyed. But if I say, just visit newshelves.com/giveaway, that's easy to remember. It's easy to type. So those are the things you want to consider if you are using some type of lead magnet in your audio. Same thing honestly goes for a print book. If you're doing a print book with a free download, then you kind of want to keep that in mind because people can't click on it. They're having to type it in. This is also where QR codes can come in handy. And if another option for your audiobook is you may have a free download with the audiobook that is not a landing page or an email collection page. It may be something you upload with the book file, so it's delivered directly from the retailer. but you might be able to work something in there that says something like, maybe the PDF is maps, but you might also be able to work something into that PDF that says for additional information, visit and have your website or something like that. So you might be able to turn that free PDF download that comes with the audiobook into a bit of a plug for your landing page if you do it very carefully. So that's something to consider as well. But absolutely great idea. And you can do that. It's within the range of what you're allowed to do. Now, I wouldn't do a full 10-minute commercial probably, but you can do something small, short, sweet. Um, yes. This one from Richard. Lots of ads from both Amazon and Facebook with new deals on ads. Any changes worth considering? I am sure, I'm positive that if you are currently running Amazon ads, you have probably been receiving notices from Amazon ads to consider changing or looking at your clicks or your ads for Prime Day. Prime Day is coming up, I believe it's July 16th and 17th. And Amazon ads, keep in mind, aren't just for authors and books. They're for large products. They are for retailers. They're for everyone. And so Amazon, let's also keep in mind that Amazon makes more on their ads than they make from all of their subscription services combined. Prime, Kindle Unlimited, Audible. They make more from their advertising than they do from all of their subscriptions combined. So, with that said, keep in mind that Amazon, yes, for some people, adjusting their ads, adding budget, making their dynamic bids go up and down rather than just down, it makes sense. If you are selling larger products, if you're selling treadmills and you're doing a deal over Prime Day, if you're selling larger items over Prime Day and you're doing a sales push, that makes sense. I have to say that as far as authors are concerned, I have never personally seen where Prime Day spikes sales for authors because most people who are looking for those Prime Day deals for lightning deals, they're not looking for books. They're looking for big ticket items or they're looking for gift items. So I personally do not suggest that you add more ad budget during Prime Days. I do not suggest that if you've got dynamic bids down only, which kind of controls Amazon spending rather than allowing them to spend more if you have dynamic bids up. I don't suggest you change that because there will probably be more people on Amazon. There'll be more people searching, and there is more chance of people clicking on your ads, which means there's more chance of you spending more. However, they're not likely looking for books. They're just not, unless you have something that is like a big gift set that you're discounting, something like that. So I do not recommend that you adjust your ad strategy or budget for Prime Day unless you choose to actually bring your ad budget down, or if you've had dynamic bids up and down, you might want to go down just for Prime Days to kind of control your spending there. Now, I've also seen Amazon kind of making pushes for getting advertising in markets other than the US. So we know that with Amazon, you can run ads in the UK, you can run ads in Canada, you can run ads in the US and Australia. And so I am seeing Amazon make offers to certain authors for free ad spend. They say, start an ad today and get $200 free. Read the fine print on those. Sometimes it is run an ad today, start an ad between this date and this date, and get $200 free ad credit when you spend $500 or when you run an ad for a consecutive month. Like there are sometimes details in there that it's not just, oh, you have $200 free to spend. It's $200 after you spend your first 100. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes those deals are great. If you've been wanting to try out a new market or you've been wanting to up your ad spend anyway, take advantage of it. But keep in mind that a lot of those things, like most coupons, I mean, most coupons aren't like just come in and get something free. It's buy one, get one free or something along those lines. So just make sure you're reading the fine print to know exactly what you're getting into. Because that is definitely important. The other thing a lot of people have asked me about is, that we are big fans of Dave Chesson and Kindlepreneur. and they are the creators of Publisher Rocket. And Publisher Rocket has just undergone a really big update, which has new features, which is awesome. I will say their price has also gone up slightly. But Publisher Rocket, you have heard me talk about it, is a one-time pay. So you get the license, you get to use it for a lifetime, you get all the updates, and it's up slightly, but it's still only $199 at the moment, which is well worth the money in my opinion. And so I do have to say that I think that it's well worth the money in those cases. And the other thing that we are seeing with Publisher Rocket, and I'll drop the link in here. This is an affiliate link. I will tell everybody, I'm not trying to hide it. If you purchase through this link, New Shelves gets a very small, well, I shouldn't say very small. We get a kickback, no extra expense to you. Feel free to use it if you'd like or don't, if it makes you feel weird. But Publisher Rocket is this research tool. And so Cheryl was asking, what kind of updates are we seeing from this? So some of the updates that we are seeing from the updated Publisher Rocket is just they've honed in some of their tools a little bit more. So whereas before you really had to do research on, you had to find your comp titles. And then from there, you could do research for your categories, your metadata keywords, for your ads, your keyword ads. And it's fantastic. It was a fantastic tool. Well, this new version, which I have to admit, I haven't been able to play around with too much yet, but the new version actually takes information about your book and gives you more targeted information based on your book. Not as much from the comps that you list, but that from your actual information. And they pull some of those keywords and things. So it's actually even less work now, less reliant on you figuring out who your comps are and where your book should go, which is very, very helpful. They're also making it easier to take some of this data and plug it directly into Amazon. So as far as new things, I wouldn't say that how to word this. I think it's still got all of the same useful information. I think they've made it easier to use. So if you felt a little intimidated by Publisher Rocket before, it's now very much just easier to use. It's less reliant on your knowledge of the industry and more you plugging in your book details and getting it. And the other thing that tied into ads and made me think of it is Dave Chesson has also released a free Amazon ads course. And I think it's a fabulous course. Not only because it talks about how to use Publisher Rocket for ads, but because it's a nice overview of Amazon ads and it's completely free. So even if you're not sold on buying the Publisher Rocket course yet, absolutely okay. Anyone and everyone, whether you have Publisher Rocket or you don't have it or whatever the spectrum may be, I highly encourage, I just dropped a link in here for the Amazon ads course from Publisher Rocket. It's free and I encourage you to go check it out. It's great training. It's from a trusted source. And again, it's free, so you can't really lose out there. So highly, highly recommend that. Yeah, it's a really great resource. Let me just check the Q&A here. Speaking of Amazon Prime Days, does it make sense to promote pre-order of an ebook during Prime Days with a discount? You could. I think that if you're going to do that, I wouldn't necessarily promote through Amazon and Amazon ads. I would more be promoting through like social media, like tying it into Prime Day, but not necessarily advertising on Prime. I would be advertising more on like I said, social media. You can say, you know, in honor of Prime Day, I'm discounting my book on Amazon or something like that. So I think that's what I would recommend. All right. And there was a question in the comments. I'm going to see if I can grab it. Where can I find information on printing books in China to get the price of color for books down? Yes. So if you're looking for the cost of printing books, it is well known that you can print in the US, but printing overseas in Asia is some of the least expensive way to buy books. Now, I do want to point out that this is for quantity books. you typically are going to need to buy at least 1,000 copies of the book to get the price down after you pay shipping and taxes and all of that information. But I will say, buying books overseas, I have a publisher I work with, a print book on demand. This book would cost, in hardcover, it would cost somewhere between $10 and $12 to print. If we printed it in the US, it would be around $5 to print, I believe, and printing it overseas, it's about $2.50. Now they are buying in large quantities, typically between 5 to 10,000. So that's how we were able to get the price down. So if you are interested in pricing out printed books offset overseas, looking for the trusted companies, I do have a list. I don't have it readily available, but if you email info@newshelves.com and ask for my printer list. I have a whole list of printers, both US and abroad, that I've used or have been recommended to me, and I'm happy to share that with you. You just have to email me info@newshelves.com. Then you contact them. They will want to know all of your specs, the size that you're looking for. They're going to want to know your trim size, your page count, what kind of pages you want, what colors you're looking for. They're going to want all of that detail and information. So make sure you have that available. And I personally recommend that you get print pricing from multiple offset printers if that's what you're deciding to do. Find someone in the US. See if you can find someone local that you might not even have to pay large shipping fees for. Look at overseas and bigger companies, smaller companies, and kind of ask them for the same thing, the same exact specs, and see what kind of numbers you get. But also keep in mind lead time. I will say that my US printers, we typically have books in 2 to 3 months. And if we're going overseas, it's not uncommon to wait 4 to 6 months for printed copies of a book. So keep that in mind as well. Let me see. I'm going to answer Lars's question because I think it ties into some of the others. Here. All right. Oops. Yep, here we go. All right. Um, I've been working on a 4-year memoir, which now sits at 106,000 words. I have contacted numerous publishing firms online who have sent me their publishing packages detailing the services and pricing of each. It is getting overwhelming. I feel the manuscript needs revision to a goal word count of 80 to 85,000 words. I could not agree with you more, Lars. This is coming up more and more about word count. Doesn't matter. Yeah, it does. If you want to land a legitimate publisher, they typically are looking for specific word counts. And unless you are a proven epic fantasy or romantasy author, proven, mind you, not new, not debut, they are looking for very specific word counts. And for the most part, that's going to land somewhere between 70 and 90,000 words. And anything over just gets kind of, they get rid of. They say, no, it's not in their wheelhouse because it's more expensive to edit, to print, it's more expensive overall, and they're not typically going to take that risk on newer authors. So then, should I trust an unknown editor from an online company to do what's required or hire an editor to work with me before giving it to a publishing company? How does one know which companies are legitimate? So that's 2 questions. Let's break that down. Number 1, as far as your editing, you can absolutely hire someone who just focuses on editing. More than that, we have talked about, when Jess was on, we talked about the different types of editing. We talked about how there is developmental editing, which is really structure and copy editing and line editing. It's important to know what kind of editing you really need and are looking for. And at this point, it may be developmental editing. If you're really looking for structure and how to cut down words and things like that, it may be for you. So finding someone specifically that is an editor, number 1, that is the type of editor that you want and need. And beyond that, finding someone who very much works with your genre, who works and likes memoir is something I would really consider. I am going to drop the link. Now, if you go to YouTube, you go to youtube.com/New Shelves Books. You will see one of the most recent episodes was a chat with Jess Berg. And in that or you can always just search her name or editing on the YouTube channel. And that interview covers a lot of your questions about editors specifically. So I'd encourage you to check that out. As far as, do you trust a company's editor? Do you go with your own? It depends on how you want to publish. If you are hoping to pitch an agent, and then if you land an agent, getting that agent to then pitch your book to publishers, traditional publishers that will pay you typically upfront for the rights to your book, and then you get a royalty for the book. Then no, you don't want to necessarily work with a hybrid or a publishing company that's going to charge you, because those are not, they're not the same. That is not traditional publishing. So if you're hoping to get an agent and then from there have an agent pitch your book to a publisher who will traditionally publish your book, then I would encourage you to find an editor, not a publishing company, just an editor that fits your needs, and work with them first. Now, if you are more along the lines of, I'm open to hybrid publishers, to self-publishing, and I'm just ready to find someone who can help me move this along. And I tell you, I talk to authors all the time who are like, I don't have that dream of traditional publishing. I want to get this story out. I'd love to sell it. I'd love to make money, but my goals are different than someone who's maybe going for a traditional publisher. And so if that's the case, you might find a hybrid publisher who really will, they have editors in-house, or they work with freelance editors who they include it all in their package, where they are actually, directing you to, or when you pay them, you're paying for editing, you're paying for cover, publishing, and all of that. And that's legitimate as well. I know someone on here is going to say something, but I'm going to tell you that published is published, and it's more about your goals and what you want for your book and what fits for you than anyone's idea or standard of publishing. I will say more and more as I talk to agents and people at traditional houses, I'm hearing more and more that their most successful authors might be traditionally published, but they're also indie publishing. They're also having different streams of revenue, and there's nothing wrong with that. Know that if you self-publish or indie publish, you are the publisher. You're responsible for a lot of things, and you can work with a hybrid publisher, which partners with you, and you subsidize some of the cost of publishing. You can subsidize all the cost of publishing and hire someone to walk you through the steps. That's something we do here at New Shelves. Or you can just learn online. You can come to Free Advice Friday. You can be in Facebook groups, and you can learn it and do it on your own and self-publish that way. There's many options, and none of them are wrong. They are dependent on what you need. So I think that's one of the first things to consider is, how do you want to publish your book? What are your dreams for the book? Because that will really determine what steps you take. And again, if you go to the New Shelves, I know I keep saying this, but if you go to the New Shelves YouTube channel, I actually have a video, and it's called You Wrote a Book, Now What? And it walks through the different types of publishing and why you might choose different ones. I'll drop the link in our live chat today. But for anyone watching the replay or watching on Facebook, you can just go to New Shelves YouTube, You Wrote a Book, Now What? And we talk more about that. Now, let's say you've decided, okay, I want to work with a publishing company, a consultant, I want to do hybrid publishing, whatever it may be. How do you vet these people? How do you decide if someone, if you should pay them, if they're trustworthy? And so the question here, there are a couple ways to vet people. Of course, you can always ask for other projects they've worked on. You can ask for references. And one of the even better things to do is to check them out online. Google their name with the word spam. There is a wonderful, wonderful blog that is kind of run by Victoria Strauss, and it's called Writer Beware. And I highly encourage that you go visit her blog. It's Writer Beware. Go visit the blog. And then once you visit the blog, there's a search bar. Use that search bar to search the company you're considering working with and see what comes up, because they do a lot of coverage for publishing companies, and if they're not on the up and up, chances are they may be listed on Writer Beware. I'm going to drop the link for those live. Anyone else, just Google Writer Beware, you'll see it. Other things that you can do to kind of protect yourself is to check out reputable organizations. So IBPA has a checklist of what they consider must, like, things you should check for if you're going to work with a hybrid publisher. It's a great list. And IBPA is the Independent Book Publishing Association. And so you can use some of their resources online, even if you're not a member. And then if you are a member, you have access to more things, and you can even check out, see if someone's a member there, if they have a reputation, so on and so forth. Similarly is ALLI, the Alliance of Independent Authors. Now, IBPA is more focused in the US. It's not US exclusive, but it's more focused in the US, while ALLI is more focused overseas in UK. And so they also have a lot of opportunities. They actually have something called a watchdog. What do they call it? I think a watchdog list. And they, again, you can go onto their watchdog list. You can search companies and see if they have ratings or systems. And not only can you look for people who have had issues, you can look for legitimate partners as well. For example, if you go to Ally and you search New Shelves Books or New Shelves, you'll find us there. We are, we're rated as a trusted partner. And so you can go in and you can look for not only scams, but also they'll tell you if someone is legitimate, if it's something that you should, or that, they feel you can trust. Those are the things that I'd be looking for before I work with any company. Sometimes you find nothing. Maybe they're new, maybe they haven't been very active. Sometimes you find nothing. And then, again, references, do your due diligence. But if they're, I will say, and we've all seen this probably as writers and authors, if someone's doing things right, people don't always take to the internet to leave a review or to sing out praise. But you best believe that if someone is angry, if they feel like they were, ripped off, if they feel like they didn't receive the level of service that they wanted or paid for, they will absolutely go online. They will talk about it. They will complain. They will ask Writer Beware to look into them. That is the nature of people. Same thing with book reviews. Sometimes we get some really nice book reviews. Just as well, the people who write the longest book reviews are the ones who did not like your book. Why? It's human nature. And so I think that's one of the things is, yes, you want to look for companies that have positive ratings and reviews. Sometimes that's a little bit harder to find than the negatives, but the negatives can, of course, help us kind of weed out what maybe is not a great company to work with. And so, Elaine, to your question, you asked about a specific company. I'm not familiar with them, but I would go through this process. I would go through this process just the same way to kind of vet out anyone, and hopefully that helps. And if you do have any further questions, if you're like, man, I'm not even sure how I want to publish, New Shelves, we do always offer free 15-minute calls for new authors or authors we haven't worked with before. So if you want to look at your book directly and it's just a free call, you can always get in touch, info@newshelves.com, and we can schedule a 15-minute call, and sometimes we can help you figure it out. So that's an option as well. All right. And most importantly, above and beyond all of this stuff, congratulations on writing your book, because that's an amazing feat. And just writing it and doing what you did, all of you have done, is pretty amazing. So congratulations, and you should absolutely be proud of yourself for that. Let's see. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I'm editing a book for someone who is looking for a publisher for her second book. Her first book was a self-published memoir. The second book is a story written for older children that deals with healing from emotional or physical abuse. Gardening is a primary theme in the book. The author is also an artist and is creating her own illustrations. I'm thinking her best bet might be to look for a niche publisher in education or mental health. There actually are, there's publishers that are associated with what is it? I just saw one of them on LinkedIn. The Association of Pediatrics or something, I think, has someone connected in publishing. There are a lot of, if you look for big mental health organizations, children's organizations, you might be surprised how many actually do have some type of publishing imprint. So that is something you can absolutely look at. I will say that when you're going for a traditional publisher, sometimes, actually very often, unless you are the illustrator, they are not looking for the author to present illustrations. They want to do their own. So just keep that in mind. Now, if it's going to a smaller niche press and you're going more with a finished book and illustrations in hand, that may be different. But in many cases, a traditional publisher, unless the author is the illustrator, they are not looking for the author's illustrations. They want to create their own. So just keep that in mind. But I think the idea of a niche or small press is really great. And I promise they're out there. Go look at it. Look at the organizations that have to do with mental health, that have to do with children. I wouldn't so much say gardening, even though gardening is a primary theme. Of course, I haven't seen the book. But I'm not sure that gardening would probably be the direction I would go in, but the other two, absolutely. All right, let me see. All right, let's see. What kids' books do better, self-published or traditional? I think both can do well. I've worked with authors who did a ton with their children's books. I will say that children's books present their own level of struggles, not the word, the challenges, because children's books, to be profitable with a children's book, they're typically in print, more than ebook sales. They're more in color, which means they're more expensive to print per copy. So that means an author's royalty is typically lower per copy sold, whereas a publisher who's doing offset print and doing 1,000 copies for $2 a piece compared to a author who's doing print on demand in full color and paying $8 or $9 a piece, they're going to make different, they're going to have different profits there. And so as far as making more money, I would say traditional publishing typically has more money in it just because of that. But I also think it's all about the marketing. I've seen traditional kids' books that did not get a lot of marketing and they didn't get a lot of sales. And I've seen indie authors self-publish and market the heck out of it and they got the sales. So I think sometimes it's having the right topic at the right time. And sometimes it just comes down to marketing. And a traditional publisher will do some marketing for you. They will do some PR work and different things like that, but it usually comes down to the author. Is the author pushing their book? Are they working to market their book as well as not just get it out there and publish it, but are they marketing the book? And that is the biggest indicator of sales, regardless of how you publish. All right, let me see here. Do I need to purchase an imprint name or register name? So I am not a lawyer. I cannot give you legal advice. I'm not a CPA. I cannot give you official financial advice. What I am telling you is simply what I've heard, what I've personally done, and you can then decide from there. Yeah, that I absolutely just did a little CYA. So as far as an imprint name is the name you are publishing your books under. Many authors will simply say, I'm using this imprint name. Now, I do have an article on the New Shelf's website that kind of has some best practices as far as when you're deciding on an imprint name. I would recommend that you do a search of the copyright and trademark offices to make sure no one's currently using it in this way for publishing in books. So I would recommend doing that. I would not recommend trying to use a name from a very well-established company that probably has a trademark. That's asking for trouble. We don't want Carrie's HarperCollins books because that's probably going to come back and bite me. So I do not recommend that. However, it's very common for authors to simply use an imprint name. They don't necessarily trademark it or do have a business under that name. So that's how many authors do it. I'll say some authors will start a DBA or LLC under the publishing imprint name they choose. Still others will try to trademark that name. Now, trademark you can do on your own. A lot of people will use a lawyer because you do have to go through some steps with the trademark office. You kind of have to prove how you're using it and why it's special to you and so on and so forth. So I would say most people simply use an imprint name. They do not register it anywhere. Then there are people who are setting up their books and their publishing as a business. They're using a DBA or an LLC. And that's kind of, so it's like big pool using an imprint. Smaller pool is registering as a business, DBA, LLC. And then still even smaller of those people are those people then using a trademark specifically for that or applying for one. So from that, you can kind of decide what direction you'd like to go. And I did drop the New Shelves blog in there about naming your publishing imprint name and company right in the chat. Let me see. All right. The next thing to talk about today is I've had multiple people this week send me a video. I think it started out on TikTok and then it was on Instagram and things like that. I've had multiple people send me a video about an author who did a print pre-order of her books using IngramSpark. And because IngramSpark and Amazon don't necessarily play nice, this author had a number of books returned to IngramSpark, and now she's out $600. And I've seen TikToks that range from good information, reasonable advice, swinging wildly to IngramSpark is the devil. You shouldn't use them. You shouldn't do a pre-order. This is their fault. This is KDP's fault. There are a range of videos out there, and I did do a reel connecting to one of them, but to talk about it because you guys know I do very often recommend using a pre-order, and for print books, I do recommend using IngramSpark for your print pre-order and then using KDP for your Kindle ebook pre-order. And then when your print books go live, I recommend using KDP for Amazon because you make more money for your print book, but still keeping IngramSpark for your bookstores and your libraries. So let's talk about this idea because what happened to this author in particular is she put her book up on IngramSpark for pre-order and for the print pre-order. And so she put it up on IngramSpark. She put it, I assume, I don't know this for sure, but based on some of the things that people are saying in these videos, it sounds like she put it up at a full trade discount of 55%. And she also put it on on return, and I think return destroy. So I'll talk about all of these terms in just a minute. So she put it on return destroy. And she did that because that is what bookstores and retail stores typically like. Now, when this book went up for pre-order, IngramSpark does what it's supposed to do. It sent that listing once approved. They sent it out to barnesandnoble.com for pre-order, bookshop.org for pre-order. It's up on Ingram, so bookstores and libraries could order it for pre-order. And they also sent the book to Amazon for pre-order. This is what they're supposed to do. This is what your contract states. This is their job. And they did it. They sent the book over to Amazon for pre-order. Now, this author was fantastic at marketing. As her book's coming out, she had several hundred pre-orders, I believe. Now, of those pre-orders, a lot were Kindle, but there were a good chunk of print books as well. So what happens? Amazon, seeing these print pre-orders and not seeing this book in their system for sale, goes, ooh, this book is popular. We better order copies or pre-order copies from Ingram so that when the book comes out, we have stock in our warehouse and we can sell them. So they order, I don't know how many it is. Let's say it's 100 copies. They order 100 copies for pre-order. So on the day this book launches, Ingram ships Amazon 100 copies of the book, and Amazon starts to fulfill orders. Now, meanwhile, the author is using KDP as well. So they have their book up on KDP, same book, same ISBN, just as I recommend. And what happened is when that KDP version went live, Amazon will always prioritize their own product and their own sales. So what Amazon did is that when KDP, the print book, went live, they started selling the KDP version. And the IngramSpark copies, the Ingram copies, just sat on the shelf. And then after a period of time, after a launch, it's typically going to be a couple months. What Amazon did was, these copies haven't sold. We need to return them. So then they returned them to IngramSpark. I believe the number that I heard was 82 copies. So let's say they ordered 100 and then 82 got returned because they're fulfilling from KDP. And because the author has return set, what happens is that she then got stuck with essentially having to pay back the royalties of those books. And it was about $600 from what I've heard. And so people are now saying because of Amazon and IngramSpark, this author is out $600. And I do not, I actually saw one video that said it's not the author's fault. Neither IngramSpark or KDP listed on their website that this could happen. I don't think it's the author's fault. I'm not blaming the author. She did probably advice she had heard. She did what she thought was best. I'm not blaming the author. However, I will say that the author, acting as a self-publisher, is responsible for the business and the business mistakes. And that sucks. I'm not trying to say it doesn't. It sucks and it's unfortunate, but it's a lesson learned. IngramSpark is not at fault, and honestly, even Amazon's not at fault. Does it stink? Do you wish it didn't happen? Absolutely. But it's not IngramSpark's responsibility to tell you that Amazon may buy extra stock and they may return them. It's not their responsibility. When you set a book for returnable on IngramSpark, they do have several pop-ups that you have to click, that you have to recognize. And I'm going to read them. Right here, I'm going to read them so that it pulls up exactly what it says and what this author and every author that uses IngramSpark agrees to. I understand that applying a discount, I'm not that one, I'm sorry. I understand that selecting the yes, deliver, return option means that copies of the title can be returned to Ingram, and Ingram will ship the return copies to me. My account will be charged the current wholesale cost of each returned copy, plus shipping and handling fees, which is currently $3 per book for U.S. returns to a U.S. address, and $20 per book for U.S. returns to a non-U.S. address. The condition of return copies is not guaranteed. I understand that selecting no return option for a market means retailers cannot return copies of my book to Ingram. This status can limit the likelihood that bookstores will purchase your title, which can limit the title's retailer reach. I accept all prices above and understand that this currency conversion reflects the pricing entered today, but will not automatically update in line with extra exchange rate, blah, blah, blah. So if you set a book to return, you are acknowledging these terms. And when you are setting returns on IngramSpark, there are three options. No, I'm not taking returns, which means you don't take returns. That's fine. It'll get you up on barnesandnoble.com and get you up on Amazon for pre-order. What it will not do is if you have no returns, in most cases, retail stores and bookstores are not going to be interested in your book. Many of them require returnability. So you need to know that. The other two return options are yes, deliver, which is what I just read. And this is where those copies are required that the bookstore has to return those copies. And those copies do get shipped directly to you, the person who holds the IngramSpark account. They get shipped to you. And that means the wholesale cost, so the cost of what the bookstore paid, plus $3 per book is what you get charged. So if the wholesale cost of a book is $5, so that's going to be wholesale cost is what the bookstore paid. If you have a full trade discount, that's going to be about a 40% discount. So let's just say that the wholesale cost was $5 per book. Then you are paying $5 plus the $3 shipping per book, which means to get those books back, you're going to pay $8 per title. And the condition is not guaranteed. They have to be saleable, which we've talked about. Could mean they're a little dog-eared. It could mean they're a little worn looking, but they have to be saleable. So then if that's 100 copies, you guys know I'm not good at math, but if that's 100 copies and they're being returned at $8 per copy, that's going to add up very quickly. It's going to be $800. So that is how that happens. Now, the other return option is return destroy. And I'm going to read these out as well directly from IngramSpark. And again, if you choose this option, you have to check it won't let you pass this screen without acknowledging this. I understand that selecting yes, destroy return option means copies of the title can be returned to Ingram, and I will not receive a physical copy in return. My account will be charged the current wholesale cost of each copy returned, but no shipping and handling fees will apply. Ingram will destroy any returned copies received. This means typically what bookstores do is they tear off the front cover. We've talked about this. We've all seen the pictures on social media of like piles of books with their covers ripped off. This is returned books. So they destroy them by ripping off the cover. They ship that into Ingram as proof of destroying. And then the bookstore gets the refund. And what's charged if the wholesale cost is $5 per book and there's 100 books, then obviously this is going to be a lower price than if you're returning because it's going to be $300 less. It would be $500. 500 in returns that then you're responsible for paying back to them, but then you don't have copies of the book. So depending on if you have space for them, if you are reselling at different farmers markets or fairs or different things, it kind of depends on how you would set your returns. But this is required. It does not, it's pretty clear. And then once you select this, your print pricing options that are right on IngramSpark, it specifies even more information on your pricing area. So why do I read over all of these terms? I'm doing this to say, not blaming the author. I'm not, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even think of these possibilities until you hear about them or you're in this situation. So I'm not blaming the author, but I am saying that neither is it IngramSpark's fault that the author, as the publisher on IngramSpark, agreed to these terms. And while it really stinks that Amazon and IngramSpark have this little kind of feud, I guess, going on to where, authors can get caught in the middle, indie authors in particular, and that is terrible and it stinks. However, IngramSpark didn't do anything wrong. Accepting returns is not wrong. You agreed to the terms. And it's for a long period of time. I believe that they can do returns for up to 6 months after the book was purchased. I have to fact check me on that one. But so it does stink. And it stinks that in this case, and this is not the only time it's happened, where a book has a print pre-order, a lot of orders were printed, and then the KDP version went live. Should authors know that this could happen? Yes, they should know. I mean, I think, but that's not on necessarily the responsibility of either KDP or IngramSpark. This is the responsibility of author education, of us as a community being educated and sharing insights, which is why I've taken the time to go over this here, because I think it's really important. It's as I said, I think in my Instagram post, it's a little bit of don't hate the player, hate the game. And that's what this is. This is just all part of publishing. And it was a very expensive lesson for this one author, a painful lesson, I'm sure. And I absolutely feel for them. And I hope that they're able to sell and recoup those losses. But I think that it's important that we learn from it rather than pointing fingers or saying never do a pre-order. I think that's silly. So what would I do in this situation? If you are doing a print pre-order for your book and you're not going to be pitching bookstores, you're not hoping for book signings or events right when the book launches. I personally, if I was setting my book on pre-order, so it would go print pre-order to Amazon and I wasn't planning on reaching out to retail stores, I would recommend that on the back end of IngramSpark, when you're setting the book up, I'd set the book at a 40% discount instead of a 55% discount. This means that you're making higher royalties. In fact, it's pretty darn close to what you would make from an Amazon sale, because that was the other thing, is that you earn less per copy sold on Amazon compared to IngramSpark. And some of these videos were saying it was because IngramSpark is greedy, which is completely wrong. The difference is that Amazon is the retailer. So Amazon's 40-60 split, authors do get higher royalties because Amazon is both They're the distribution and they are the store. They're earning their income all in one. Whereas on IngramSpark, the discount you sent is passed on to bookstores and libraries. Ingram and IngramSpark don't keep all of that. IngramSpark gets paid to print. Ingram Wholesale typically keeps 15%, which is not that much for what they do. And then the rest goes to the bookstore or the library, who then has to make libraries. Again, they're not resale for profit, but bookstores are, and they have to make a living as well. So this is not, you don't get a lower royalty because IngramSpark is greedy. That's just silly. You get a lower royalty because of the process of publishing and how sales work. So if you're doing a pre-order and you would like higher royalties and you don't want this possibility of returns, the way that you do it is that you set your book up for print pre-order on IngramSpark so it pushes out to Amazon. But instead of a 55% discount to appeal to retail stores, you do a 40% discount, which will get you online. It'll get you on BarnesNoble.com, bookshop.org, and on Amazon. You will be earning close to the royalty you would earn on Amazon for print sales. And then you set your book as non-returnable. Simply set it as non-returnable. Keep in mind that the terms apply to the purchaser when they purchase. So if your book is set as non-returnable when Amazon purchases it, even if you change that later, Amazon can't return it. It's based on when they purchased. So you set your book as non-returnable. No, this is not going to appeal to bookstores or retail stores. If you're trying to set up book signings and events, this will not work. But if you're not doing that, if you're focused online and Amazon, it works. Then what you do, you set your book for pre-order on IngramSpark, 40% non-returnable. Then if Amazon has extra copies, they have to sell them before, they might sell them before the KDP version goes live, but you're not out the money. Meanwhile, when the book launches and goes live, you can make your KDP version go live, and that's what will show up on Amazon. Now, in some cases, what may happen is if Amazon said, ooh, we need 100 copies, they pre-order was 80 copies. Well, then what happens is because Amazon can't return those copies and they want to sell them, they will probably prioritize selling those 20 copies in the warehouse before you see those KDP sales. So that may happen. But you are not stuck with $600 in returns. So that is one of the things that I really, really would just consider doing. And again, it's unfortunate, but it's not really anyone's fault. It's a very painful lesson. And I feel so sorry for this author, but I hope that we can all as a community educate and learn from it so that you don't end up in that same situation. And with that, that was my Friday soapbox. And I think we got all our questions answered. But I think, again, there is a way to do print pre-orders without all of that risk. Hopefully that all explains it. And if you have more questions, you can always ask. But we're out of time for today. So if you have questions, follow up, just email them info@newshelves.com, and then I'll cover them next week. We'll be back then at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you for being here, you guys. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next week.